Insomnia from UnrealTek.net, a division of BlenderTek.com here, and welcome to the third video on Unreal Engine 4 networking through replication. Today we're going to look at the most basic form of replication, which is basic actor class replication, which is a game object if you're still thinking in Unity terms, in which case get with the times. So we'll look at actor replication. We'll look at just very basically how it works and how it affects the server-client model at the most basic form, since this is such a complicated topic overall. So with that said, grab some popcorn, remember, create your way, and let's get started. I've gone ahead and created a new first-person template project that we'll use for this tutorial series most of the time, since it has stuff like shooting out of the box, which is a standard for multiplayer games, and I'll probably provide a download for it once we get to things like chat and such. Anyway, last time we learned how to test multiple players, so let's see out of the box what works and what doesn't work with 1 and 2 players. So right now I've got it set to 1 player. We're gonna hit play. So we are the server. I've added this box in front of the character that I've called the doodad, so we can do some testing. But as you can see, everything works and it seems perfectly fine. So now let's go to 2 players. We'll hit play. I've adjusted the size so that we can see stuff. So I'm the client and I can see the server, and if you see the server in the background, you can see my client moving. You can see his doodad and his gun. However, you'll notice you don't see the client's arms in the background, and you'll notice in the client's window we don't see the server's arms either, even though we know that we each have arms on when we go to play. So why is that? Well, let's first look at the arms, because this is something very quick that I want to bring up so that you don't get confused about it, and since we won't bring it up for a long time. If you go to your first person character, select the arm mesh, and go all the way down to rendering. You can even search up in the top, a little tip for you, rendering. You'll see there is only owner C. Now this has connotations to single player usually. That'd be when you only want the owner to see it and not somebody else, like actually sorry, it has connotations with multiplayer, but it also does have connotations with some single player stuff, because in multiplayer you would use this for something like, say, a 3D health bar above the head if you didn't want your player to see his, but if you wanted everybody to see everybody else's, you would use this option. So if we uncheck this and compile and save and then hit play, you will now see that we see each other's arms. So that's just that quick little information, but we won't get into that for quite a while. What I wanted to exemplify is this box over here called BP Spinner. What it does, if we go into the blueprint editor, is every single frame it rotates 1 degree, and it's completely stock. All I've done was created an actor class blueprint and added a cube and then set that to be the root component. So if we compile and save, and if we play with 1 player, so just the server, and go over there, we see that it is spinning. And if we go and play with 2 players, so that we get to see the client, we will notice that it is also spinning on the client. Why is that? If we go into class defaults, you'll see that under replication, it doesn't replicate, and it doesn't replicate movement. So why is the client still able to see that? You would expect that since it's not replicating, only the server would see it move. This is the core of replication. This is all happening local. Since we are adding rotation to this cube on every tick, it's just going to work no matter what. Since we are not getting this Z value from anywhere else, it's going to work, since this is local side on the client server model to both client and server. So this is going to work for both. So Something like this is you could use for things that would do something like this in the environment. If you had something that moved, let's say some piece of machinery, but had nothing to do with gameplay, this works just fine. But let's say that we wanted this to rotate based on, you know, maybe a player coming near it or a player clicking. So let's pretend that we had a variable called rotation rate, and you can see it's not replicated, and we'll make it a float and set it to 1. This is still going to work. If we split the struct pin and feed it into there, it's still going to work. We'll test that out, although I'm sure of it. The client will still see it rotating. Where are you? Because this variable is still local side. It's still local to both the client and server in the client server model. However, if this rotation rate was only available say server side, then we would not have it local to both. So how we can quickly show that is something that you're going to see every single time when it comes to replication and networking is search for auth. So switch has authority. I'm sure you all know how a switch statement works. Basically, it comes in here, and based on authority or remote, it goes one way or the other. So authority is server, and remote is local, so the client. So authority is the server. So if we attach authority to add local rotation, so that way only the server adds the local rotation, compile, save, play, we go to the client, you'll see that it's now not spinning because we are the client. We don't have authority. We're remote, so we don't see it spinning. It is no longer relevant to us. It's in the client server model. It's only relevant to the server. So if we go to the server, he doesn't see it spin either. Why is that? Because now we're working with replication. So technically the server would be a client. But what we can do is if we go to class defaults, and this is why I brought this up, if we set it to replicate and we want to replicate movement, now if we compile and save and hit play, no, the client still isn't going to see it even though it's replicating and replicating movement because nothing's happening on the remote side of the switch statement. But if we go to the server, where are you? You will see that it's not moving either. So why is that? That's because I've got it fed in with nothing. If we feed it in, with a value, compile, save. Let's back out a little bit. So now we hit play. Okay, so the client does see it move because we set it to replicate. So if we uncheck that, go back to where we were, as we see, okay, the client can't see it. However, the server can see it, even though it's not set to replicate and it's not set to replicate movement, because we go to the switch, and since the server, the first player, has the authority, then it's allowed to execute there. But if we set this to replicate movement and replicates and hit play, then as we saw, both of them see it move. That's because this is owned by the server, or I guess you could say the server is the owner and replicating its movement to movement and location. That's what replicating movement means, actually. Movement and location to other clients. So that's what that means. And to exemplify the remote, what we can do is we can go print string. Actually, let's just delete this entirely, or we'll just move it. since we might want to use it again. So to exemplify this in the most basic state, we can print string hello, or we can just say I'm the server and I'm the client. And we'll change the color. The client will be orange and the server will be blue. So if we compile, save, play, you can see we get both. So the client sees client 1, I'm the client, and server, I'm the server. And the server sees client 1, I'm the client, and server, I'm the server. Since it's not really visual, it's just a repeating debug log, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but this is the basics behind it. Basically, remote is what's going to happen locally, and authority is when you're the server, what's going to happen. So an example of this, if we went remote and if we set up if we went and if we set this to not replicate, I'm the server, I'm the client, and the server, I'm the client, I'm the server, you'll see that it's still working. They both have authority, or they don't both have authority, but when they get to the switch authority, even though it's not replicating, it's still saying the remote person is going to print I'm the client, and the server with authority is going to print I'm the server. And this way we're not getting two I'm the clients or two of I'm the servers. We're getting one of each because it's going through the switch statement properly, replicated or not. In this case, when we have it set to not replicated, the server is handling this, and he's saying, okay, I'm going to print I'm the server because I have authority, but anybody that's a remote, they're going to say this instead. So that is the basics of the very basics of actor replication. I wanted to bring up the switch has authority statement and kind of how it works. I wanted to show you in class defaults the replication settings to set replicate on classes that don't have it by stock, and I wanted to show you how sometimes it won't work on the client and it will on the server, or it won't work on both, or it will work on both based on your settings. And we can even go a step further to show that if we went into something like game state, or let's go game mode, and open the editor, if we were to make a variable called test string, and we made it a string and compiled, we set it to not replicate, and we made it say testing, 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 compiled and saved it. If we went into the spinner, and if we went on the remote side, if we went get game mode, and then cast to that game mode, convert to a pure cast, get, what do we call that? Get test string? Yeah, that's it, okay. And then we plug that into there. Remote, now it's not replicating, remember, so compile, save, and play. You'll see the client isn't saying anything even though that's plugged into there. And if we go to the server, we see the same thing. Now if we set it, and you'll see we get errors, it's not accessing anything because it can't. But if we set it to replicate and compile and play, we still don't see anything on the client nor the server because this isn't a replicated variable. If we go to the game mode now, and if we set it to replicate, and play, you'll see the client doesn't see anything, nor does the server. So this can get very, very tricky into figuring how does this stuff work, because if we were to plug this into the server side, And we can still try to make the client say something like, hello, I'm the client. And we compile and save and play. You'll see, okay, now it's working, but you'll see the server is able to see the is able to print the test string, because A, it's replicated, and B, he's the server. Even if we set it to not replicated, the server is still going to print it out because the server has the authority to get this string, but the client does not. So if we set them both to use the same thing and it's not replicated, and we set this to not replicate, the actor, you'll notice that only the server is able to access that. And even if we set this to replicate, and this is very basic replication, we can make the client get this, and we'll get into that in a later video. But even if we set this to replicated just on its own, and you'll see that the game mode doesn't have replication, and hit play, you'll see that the server is still the only one that has the authority. Now if we went into something like the game state and did the same thing, a string, which is a string, we'll say game state replicated string. Oops, and we'll replicate that, make it set to replicate. This one replicates, and it's always relevant. We'll get into relevancy later. If we go into our spinner now, and if we instead go get game state is something that has to do with networking more so, and cast to our game state, turn it into a pure node, pure cast that is, and get string. The double ball sign, little eyeballs thing, that means it's a replicated variable. So compile and save. So now if they have the authority, if they're the server, if they have the authority, they're going to print it, and the client is going to print it if they can pull that variable out. And you'll see both of them now can pull that out, and you'll see it in both windows. They can both get that data because it's replicated, as is our game state. And so is this actor. Even if we change it to not replicate and hit play, it's still able to print that because this is a replicated variable, and this is coming from the server. So the server is saying, okay, yeah, you're allowed to print that because this is a replicated variable and you're the client. So that is really just the basics of this is the game state is generally like for networking only. You can see how the client was able to pull from it, and I shouldn't say networking only, but you can see how the client was able to pull from it. Whereas even if we replicated the test string in the game mode, it doesn't replicate as easily. We can make it replicate, but not just by checking off checkboxes like that. So that's the very basics of more so the actor replication, how the spinning did and did not work based on whether we were the client or the server, and whether we had replicate movement and replicate checked off or not. But also a little bit about variables, which in only a basic sense of it, and also more importantly, the switch has authority, which when it receives an execution pulse, it says, okay, are we the server or are we a player, a client? And so this is something you're going to see a lot, as well as the double eyeball little things. You're going to see that a lot. So I just wanted to kind of bring those up and show that off. And so next time we will look into this in depth a little more and go through it a little more technically, and not so much just, okay, this is what happens, this is what happens, this is what happens. So anyways, thanks for watching from the team here at UnrealTek, a division of BlenderTek.com. On the advice of a couple people, we are now taking donations totally your option at paypal.me/BlenderTek, BlenderTek. If you enjoyed this video and learned something, please like it. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos. We're on social media on the links on your screen. If you dislike this video for some reason, please tell us why so we can continually improve based on your community input. We also take requests, so we'll see you next time. Remember, create your way.